This is Glambition Radio, episode number 298, The False Gods of Your Business.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Glambition Radio.
Glambition Radio.
Glambition Radio.
Glambition Radio.
Glambition Radio.
Glambition Radio.
Welcome to Glambition Radio. I am your host, Allie Brown. I'm an entrepreneur, mentor, investor, and founder of The Trust, the modern premier network for 7- and 8-figure women leaders. I love thinking big, doing different, and exploring ideas that disrupt the status quo, especially when it comes to women, because we are creating the new models for leadership, business success, making money, and changing the world. And hey, we're doing it with style. So let's go. I hope you are doing well. If you have not listened to the previous episode that we posted with me and Danielle Laporte, you want to go listen to that. Not necessarily before this one, but kind of goes with this. It's this whole idea that for most of our careers, we chase these false gods. And now we're not abandoning success. We're not abandoning ambition. We're not abandoning having goals and visions and dreams. But it's this merging with who we really are, which I feel as women, we've been trying to do this for decades. We've been trying to kind of move into this balance of these two sides together. But now the energies are so supportive of this. It's up to us. And the last missing piece is us having the courage to merge these two sides of ourselves, to be openly ambitious in business, however, led by heart, led by intuition, led by the feeling into things, honoring that part of us when we make business decisions, which may not make sense to people around us, right? They're like, look at the numbers. Here's the spreadsheet, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, this just doesn't feel like what I want to do right now. Admitting some things may not make you happy. Some things make you too tired. Some things make you too stressed. Some things aren't worth it. Some things maybe. We'll talk about that today. The theme of the show, I call this the false gods of your business. And I first started talking about this several years ago at Iconic, my event, which is coming up November 2nd and 3rd. We have less than 20 seats left. Of the dozens and dozens of women who are already registered, the majority of them run businesses that generate over $1 million. Do you have to be there? No, you don't. Imagine how that would help you being in a room of those kinds of women for 2 days. Even if you did nothing, just being in there, your vibration raises, seeing and hearing and engaging in how they do business differently. Many of them embrace these things I'm talking about in bringing in your feeling to all this, bringing in your heart to all this, operating from the inside versus the outside. They are going into industries and completely disrupting how they do things and or going and creating their whole new industries. I mean, it isn't just about the money, but that is a significant reward for them on the back end. IconicwithAllieBrown.com. IconicwithAllieBrown.com. Even if you're just curious, go take a look. There's so much information on that page. I'm not going to give it all to you here. So go take a look at that. And if this isn't a good fit for you, will you do me a favor? Let another amazing woman know about this event and say, I know you've been looking for something different. This may be just perfect for you. Have them come take a look. November 2nd and 3rd here in Phoenix. Let's talk about false gods. Do you remember the story from the Bible about the golden calf? I have to say, every year at Easter, the kids and I end up watching 10 Commandments. They freaking love that movie. I don't know what it is. They just like epic movies. Like we will sit there and watch the whole thing. It's 3 or 4 hours long and they love it. One of their favorite parts is when Moses, Charlton Heston, when he was like, oh my God, that man was just like an Adonis. And he goes up to the mountain and he's talking to the burning bush and getting the 10 Commandments. And I'm grossly probably mixing up the order of things, but he's up there for a while. And then people start getting pissed. They're down there for ages, right? Days and days and weeks and weeks. And finally, they said, this God he must be talking about, this God of Abraham, is worthless. Let's just create our own God right now. Let's go do this ourselves. Let's worship stuff like we used to, right? And they created a golden calf. And that story is very revealing of human nature and the tendency of people to stray away from their their true God. I'm going to say the true God. I'm talking more metaphorically right now. I think you're following me. But that's what that story represents, right? They got impatient. Something else was kind of sexier. It was more fun, right? It looked good at the time. It was right there, right? I don't know where this other God is, but the golden calf's right here. Let's party. That was this whole story. And I'm going to ask you today, what are the golden calves of your business? These false gods that have been distracting you from what's true. What is your real true motive? What is your end game? Because unless you get clear on this, it's really easy to not only be following these calves around, but let them tow you by the nose. I'm going to share with you just a few of the ones I've battled with personally over the years, as well as my clients. And we're going to be talking about many of these at Iconic, coming in, looking at your current state of the union, looking at what needs to change. And maybe it doesn't change. That's fine. I'm not saying it has to. But so many women in there walk out going, you know what? I see it now. I see how I can do this differently without killing myself, without working so hard, without burning out my adrenals, without ruining my family. I mean, without the suffering, right? And so they see a different way to do it in a creative, fresh, new way that still works. But they don't even realize sometimes they've been trapped in these models. So I'm going to start with the obvious. And some of these may be familiar to you, but I'm going to promise there's one or two that you're like, oh, I haven't thought of that one. False god number one is your top line numbers, whether it is revenues, launches, but those surface, often ego-oriented numbers. Let's talk about revenues for a minute. I know in the coaching, consulting, that whole world that I played in for years, top-line revenues are a scorecard, right? When you break that first million, it is exhilarating. It's exciting. You're invited into new circles. When you break 8 figures, it's exhilarating. It's exciting. You've proven that you could do it, right? And it's kind of a rite of passage to join circles and networks you've been craving to be a part of as well. This is one of the reasons why, for the trust, we have minimum revenues of $1 million. That's not the only thing we look for, but something does shift for women once they break through that barrier. It typically unlocks a whole new level for themselves and their futures. But besides this rite of passage kind of, milestone reached, let's just look at the numbers there. When you take out all the expenses, all the people helping you with the launch, the balloon arch at the events, it goes on and on and on and on and on. The people that help you run the program, right? The person that runs, your Infusionsoft or Keep account, Shopify, whatever your thing is, right? Boil way down and you get to profit. And not only profit, but what you take home. Sometimes that's an eye-opener. And you can see, you know what? I had a client do this actually. This was years ago. She was going through kind of this internal battle about this program. And on the surface, it's running fine. People are happy. Clients are happy. Her team's happy for sure, right? They're making all this money. And she was just kind of, I could tell she was getting almost a little resentful that really a lot of that didn't go to her anymore, right? It was going to everyone else. And she had some personal goals, and was trying to turn up the dial, but it wasn't impacting her personally. And she was also getting frustrated with the complexity of the program. And she had like 99 problems and they were all this program, right? And I told her, I said, I want you to go home and then next meeting, come back. I want you to dig through the numbers. And she's like, well, we kind of know our expenses. I'm like, no, everything from the flowers on the table at the meetings and the events to, paying your team, the coaches, what you think your time's worth. Just everything. We made this long, long list and she took it home. And then she came back. She said, Allie, I'm just flabbergasted. I said, what? She said, in the end, this 7-figure program alone, that program alone was 7 figures. She said, my personal take home from that is probably like $100,000. And she said, you know what? I could go probably teach one webinar right now and make that in like a few weeks with a few emails. And it was an eye-opener for her. Sometimes you do want the program. There's a reason to have the program. There's a reason to have the team, but you really got to start questioning. Like in her case, she really didn't. Sometimes it's an upsell to something. Sometimes there is a grander purpose to things, but question everything. That's the theme of this whole span we're going through of this insanity these few years. The gift in this is we are questioning everything. Launch numbers are another number that people kind of wave around at events, right? Especially the world I came from when I was from this internet marketing, the BDE kind of, the guys swinging their things around and like talking about their list size and their launch numbers and all that. And then I started talking with a few of them. And, it used to be 6-figure launches with a norm, and then it became 7-figure launches. And I'm sure now there's 8-figure launches or whatever. I don't even pay attention anymore. Behind the scenes, talking to some of these guys who are the big swingers, right? They plan for, not only expect, but plan for refund rates at over 50%. I don't even know what to say to that. There's so many things wrong with that. I don't even know, okay? Then beyond that, right? Half or more than half of what's remaining usually goes to affiliates who help with these giant launches, right? They need to maybe go recover afterwards. I know someone who went to the hospital. I had a launch probably about 10 years ago that honestly put me on Xanax. I was like, I don't know if I can ever do this again. But we followed everything that the expert guy we hired said to do. And yes, it created a lot of attention. There were some great things that happened from it. A lot of people learned about me that didn't know about me before. But in the end, if I was just looking for a specific result for myself, that wouldn't have really been it. Again, different things for different reasons, but understand why you're doing what you're doing and what your real profit is. And if you need help with this, a really good bookkeeper and accountant can help you, or just a good friend who's really good with the spreadsheets and the numbers and loves geeking out, and you can work through it together. False god number 2 is team size. Now, this is kind of an old one. When you remember growing up, we'd look at these big companies, right? I remember having neighbors down the street who would, the dads would drive off in the morning in their cars with their suits and ties on. And I remember they worked for these big companies, and my parents would say, oh yeah, that company has 10,000 employees, and it's very impressive. And impressive on the outside, right? And then businesses like ours, though, often when the team grows too large, it gets bloated, it gets inefficient, it gets stressful. Good friend of mine years ago, multi-million dollar company doing online, I'll just call it online trainings courses. It wasn't training for business. Had something like monthly overhead. I mean, it was over $500,000, I think, just for her team alone. And when things were great, it made sense. But I remember she was wrestling at this point with exhaustion and got caught in this cycle of creating launches essentially to feed the team. It was the tail wagging the dog. So finally, she started giving herself permission to make changes. She started changing the model. She started moving people on. Now she's a solid, lean team, much higher take-home profits for herself and her partner. She's a lot happier, kind of back to what she originally wanted, but then that felt small to her. This happens all the time. And I went through this myself. Don't guilt yourself over this either. These are evolutions that we go through, and they're different for everyone. There's no one right way to do this. Back in about 2015, I'd had my twins for about 2 years, and I just decided I had enough of my complicated business model. And we had programs and people, and I was just craving something so different, which I've gone into detail in some of my other solo shows. And so I started making some changes. I had some conversations with some of the team saying, listen, I've had the kids and, I'm kind of craving going a different road here. So here's what I'm thinking. Here's the plan. Your position is actually going to be phasing out. But I had some ideas. Maybe you want to go freelance. If you would like to get other clients, let me refer you. I mean, it was just really, I felt, a nice open conversation. And then I get an email suddenly about 2 weeks later from an unrelated colleague saying, I heard you're letting people go. Is everything okay? And I asked for clarification. She said, well, I heard you let your entire team go. I was concerned, you're having a lot of trouble with your business. And are you okay? And I was speechless. I said, listen, everything's great. I talked to 3 people out of 12, and, we're making some changes here. And she's like, oh, a friend told me you laid off your entire team. But, I said, well, who is this? She's like, well, I said I wouldn't tell. And so I'm thinking, okay, who's my friend anymore? That's another thing. I had to think about that for a minute. Okay, so I had a team of 10 to 12 people at the time. I talked to maybe 2 or 3 of them that their positions were changing. And I'm thinking, what happened? I didn't know what to find more bizarre. Was it more bizarre that letting go 2 to 3 people out of 10 to 12 escalated within days to rumors of a complete implosion? Or was it that going smaller in any way, even a small way, was instantly interpreted as a failure? Take that in. That fact, me moving on, a few team members, then going through the grapevine, okay, was instantly interpreted as something was wrong. And look at that, because it's really interesting. I don't know about you, but if anyone views a business owner continuing to net a high income with her business and her investments, but with a smaller team, less headaches, and more time with her family, you view that as a failure, then you don't understand anything about business or life or why we do what we do. That was such a wake-up call for me, and I'm so glad I got that email because it got me to start talking about this and us giving ourselves permission to do this in our way. But we keep bouncing up against these false gods. And it's easier when you work in a silo. That's honestly why I, kind of do the lone wolf method now. When you do have a big team, something else that happens is you kind of get sucked into what they're feeling and hearing at the same time. I remember for a while, the team would always bring us, we'd have these launch meetings and they're like, okay, we're watching this gal and she's doing this, so you should start dancing in your videos too. I'm like, absolutely not. I'm going to quote Kelly Roach in the Trust on this one, saying, dancing in reels is below my pay grade. They're doing this and you should do that. And like everything just started getting crazy. And I'm like, no, that doesn't, no. Like I was just saying no to everything. I'm like, none of that feels right. None of that feels right to me. You got to stay true to what feels right for you. Then you can scale it. Then you learn what works. Then you can get the expert, take the course and all that, right? But you don't just get the advice and do what they say without really knowing that that's a fit for you. And sometimes you won't know if it's a fit until you try it. You got to try on the pants, right? False god number 3, social followers. I have such a love-hate thing with social. Everything was so simple before social. We sold things with email. I could send out a few emails. I remember those days and make like 6 figures. It was, just from like one little promotion. We had engaged people. They were reading things. It was exciting. It was a different time. Then social came out, lowered the bar, right? Leveled the playing field. The great news is everyone can get involved. The bad news is everyone gets involved. And a new false god was created, and that is the god of social followers. We used to brag about our list size, but you never really knew, whose list was how big. Social, you see it. And so not only did we start going for the social followers, but we kind of started caring about their opinions. And I've seen some people take their eye off the ball with their business because they start shifting their content to gain more followers and not the type of clients that they really want to attract, right? So are you writing posts and creating videos just for higher numbers? Are those posts and videos designed specifically to attract that type of client or customer you want to attract? You shouldn't care about the numbers at that point. You need to care about the content that speaks to those people. Then understand the numbers from there and who they are. Even worse, one false god can lead to another, because false god number 4 is following your followers. There was an article I read a few years ago. I think it was the Wall Street Journal. It was a very unflattering feature on the designer Marc Jacobs. Now, I don't really have an opinion on him. I think I've bought some stuff from him. Don't really know much about him. So this isn't a commentary on him. But if you know that designer, he's been around a while. And this article interested me, though, because it was on the business side, right? Which I love hearing about, like what's going on with their business and their empire and decisions they made. And apparently this review was saying he lost his edge. The business was starting to go down, and they were saying it's because he lost his edge. And the writer of this article brought in some type of critic or expert and had her take a look at his stuff. So the reporter asked her to comment, on some of these new styles or something like that, the new season. And after a long pause, she said, "It looks very focus grouped contemporary." I grabbed my highlighter. I love good words and phrases. Focus grouped contemporary. It means he was playing it safe. They'd done surveys and asked customers and done focus groups and listened to what the people wanted instead of leading them into bold new places. Basically, it meant he was following his followers. Think about that. Are you doing that? Now, there is, of course, a balance of leading while also meeting people where they're at, right? You can't just be way over here and expect people to understand what you're doing or embrace it. There's going to be a bridge. You'll see designers do this. On the runway, they have like wild shit, right? Walking down the runway, you're like, oh, there's like a pants with no top, or do you know what I mean? You're like, shorts with your butt hanging out, or just wild stuff. And then they will kind of adjust it for the mass market in the stores. But they're doing edgy stuff to get attention, get people to think a bit differently, mix up their style, have some fun, right? He was focus grouped contemporary. Let's just call it FGC, okay? if you're doing this, it's a race to the bottom. If you're doing this, your work is going to be devalued because it's going to be blending in with all the other stuff out there. Everyone doing the survey and giving people what they want. And again, sometimes there's a time for that. But if this becomes your false god, it's going to get you into trouble. This was another place I got into trouble. When we were growing so quickly and we had this big audience, I realized the audience was so different. We had everyone on there from the seven-figure business owners to people who had seen me on ABC's Secret Millionaire in 2011 and kind of thought I was still giving away money. And honestly, I kind of felt bad. I'm like, well, why don't we create something for these people who have no money? Are you listening to where this is going? That this was actually a conversation we had, creating the things for the people who had no money. I'm just, okay. And it hit me later. I'm like, I give away so much free stuff already. Why are we creating things for the people who have no money? Like they could listen to the show, they could read the blog, we have email. Anyway, okay. So we started following the followers. And that, again, it's a race to the bottom because half the time people don't even know what they want or what they'd say they wanted and what they say they would pay. We create this thing and launch it. We're like, well, that was interesting. Like 3 people bought it after they all said they wanted it. I mean, it'll just drive you nuts. Get clear instead on what you stand for. What do you stand for? Take a position on something. Engage with people. Lead them your direction. Again, relate to where they're at. Be empathic. But bring them along. For God's sake. They don't know what they need half the time. False god number 5. This is fun. I'm having fun. Are you enjoying this? Status within business communities. This one is one that I don't think I've ever talked about before. And this is fascinating. Years ago, did a strategy session for a woman who came to me, was kind of locked in I don't want to share details, so I'm always very careful, locked into a specific business model that wasn't serving her at all. All right. It's why she hired me, but she didn't want to change it. And I couldn't get it at first because, I mean, this is probably like a few hours of banging my head against the wall, not understanding, she said she wanted to make changes and then I could tell she wasn't going to make changes. And finally I'm like, what? I got to get to the bottom of this. I'll call her Susie. Susie, you got to tell me why. Why do you insist on still doing this? You just told me it doesn't really work. It's driving you nuts. You're ready to jump off the bridge. Why do you still insist that this be part of your business model? And what she shared floored me. She was obsessed with this ineffective business model and insisted on perpetuating it because, are you ready? It's what she learned and was pretty much, I'm going to use the word gaslit, to think it always had worked and will work by a specific business coaching community that she was very involved in. It sounded a bit cultish, honestly. And it turns out she'd been doing this for years without really getting results on the back end and was going to continue doing it because now she was close to achieving the ultimate status within this cult community, the black belt. Are you following me? This was like cult-like ascension model. Cult-like. She didn't get clients from this community. I asked her all this. She wasn't gaining anything from the community. It was actually distracting her from profitable work that she could go make with clients. It was all ego. And then some of you who maybe go deeper into the trauma stuff, maybe this was unhealed trauma. I don't know. I mean, there's all kinds of theories, right? But you get the idea. She stayed there to earn her highest status and be celebrated. So maybe she was looking for love, and that's okay. But I'm addressing this from the business point of view here, okay? It wasn't really going to get her anything. To me, it sounded like Scientology, and you give years of your life and hundreds of thousands of dollars. I've heard these stories, and they've scrubbed the floors at Sea Org. And then at the end, they find out that top secret information they've been waiting for 30 years. They've worked their way up to the top like Tom Cruise, is kind of useless unless you feel it's helpful to know that the Emperor Xenu delivered your alien kind to Earth years ago or whatever it is, right? When people get so immersed into that type of brainwashing, they have a cognitive dissonance and they don't see that this is all BS. And yeah, I'm calling this out. This is cultish behavior. These are cult-like communities. It's brilliant psychology. I'm actually quite impressed, right? I love psychology and I love how you can feel like you're creating a community that makes people want to stay and they do feel validated there. But I'm looking at this from the business angle. That the ascension model that we've been trained in a lot of the coaching and info marketing spaces is essentially a cult strategy. You edify the higher level members. They get information the lower ones don't get. They have to invest more, right? Many people do enjoy order. They like knowing where they fit in. They like seeing what does success look like. I'll work my way up, right? Kind of like network marketing. Yeah, a lot of these, but hey, this is in corporate as well, right? It's just something to watch for. Again, not a bad thing necessarily, unless it's used for psychological manipulation. With this woman, I could have explained for hours with rational points why staying in this community was not making sense at all. And she didn't want to hear it. We had to move on. But I cautioned, she really had to let that model go at some point if she really wanted to transform her business. False god number 6 is the size of your events. Events, and I mean live events with people in seats in a room, which you saw a lot more of years ago. They're coming back now. People are craving that, by the way. If you can and want to do something live, my gosh, we'll do a whole other show on that. But, several years ago, like there were people doing these 500, 1,000 plus people events, and you could get these kind of numbers in there. When I was working with the clients doing these kinds of things, though, we'd really dissect it. Sometimes it was worth it. The event created a lot of excitement. It brought in new people. It was a place where they would promote and offer what they were offering, the coaching program, the mastermind, whatever it is. And to this day, I will tell you, live events are still the best place to offer these things because it's a congruent experience. People are there with you in person. They actually get to know you. They see you're real. And they're like, you know what? I'm ready. Sign me up. It may have taken 10 phone calls to get there, a 200-step funnel or something, but just get them in the room. Talk with them. Make it natural and easy. But they would do sometimes these giant events. And I would see people getting a little more obsessed with how it looked and the number of people in the room. And, in the end, when you look at the profit, when you look at the ROI, maybe in different ways, maybe it wasn't worth it. So sometimes we could take a model and I'll show a client how to do a room of maybe 100 people instead of 500, okay? 5 times less stress right there already, okay? Higher price. These people will bring their own pens and they won't ask for decaf. They'll be, usually they're just not as much a pain in the ass, right, as the lower priced or free events. But she was still obsessed with people seeing that she had the 500 people in the room, even though it was like bring 10 friends for free and bring your dog and we'll have a mastermind for the dog and we're going to be doing acro yoga or whatever the hell it was for you and your husband. And, we were just losing touch with reality there. I went through this myself. I had acrobats in Vegas. I'm going to tell you though, it was really fun. I rented Cowboys. Cowboys carried me off the stage in Dallas with the coaching applications. Like we had so much fun. We had fun. And then I got to a point, I'm like, you know what? This was during that transition after I had the kids. And I'm like, I'm just feeling simple right now. And, don't get me wrong. I enjoy the Cowboys in Dallas. Maybe we'll do that again at some point. I want it simple. I'm like, how can I create, this is like how we all start. And I forgot it. A lot of us forget it. How do I create the business that I want in the simplest, most enjoyable way possible? And for me now, it's smaller events. I love them. I love doing events with like 30 people, 50 people, 60, 70 maybe max. Iconic. We have room to stuff in 80. Sweet spot's like 60 to 70 usually. And it's a different feeling. The conversations are different. Like the whole room's engaged with each other. You can charge really well. Why not have an application process so people know that the room's a bit curated and there won't be a very beginner next to them or, depends what your lane is. My lane is definitely elevated for these women. So they want to know they're in a room with women at a certain level. It excites them. They love being there. And so think through this. Think through what is your reality? What is your truth for your business? Maybe you just want to do like 5-person retreats in Hawaii. Maybe you want to do just virtual events. It's totally up to you, but the events trigger people because at least during those times of the big ones, everyone would know how many people you got. It's like the launch numbers, right? But you could see it. You could see how many people were there, how many empty seats were there. Like I've seen people in the room counting the rows and people to see like how many people were in the room. And it's a big ego game, big mess with your mind thing. And the last one, my favorite, maybe not as much as the business community one, but my second favorite, false god number 7, is worshiping the process itself. Client, years ago, offering a very high touch, high impact program where you'd work closely with her, $15,000, so high price point, hired these funnel guys, okay, who came in and, she wanted to increase sales. She wanted to take the sales off herself and her team and like make things more automated, right? That's the dream. It always will be the dream, right? If we can. But anyway, at that time, the funnel was the big deal. And if you don't know what a funnel is, it's getting people into a series of messages, emails, free information, sometimes getting people to buy something small as like a warm up to get them to the big thing, which these guys would call a tripwire offer. If that isn't a bad enough word, right? As if you're going to trick people. Anyway, that's a whole other story. So that was the model. So I'm kind of questioning this, right? I'm hearing about this thing, and she's like, "Oh, we're gonna do a lot of testing." I'm like, "All right, well, keep your eye on this. I'm not sold that this is the match for what you're doing, but I'm open. You like these guys, you're happy to pay them. Let's see what happens." So supposedly, if you get people in and then they spend the $7, they'd upgrade to the next product and the next. So then she's not only creating the tripwire offer, she goes and creates a whole other program to move people through the ascension up to the higher thing. She created a mini course and then a bigger course and then a lower end program because people still weren't buying the 15K. And all this, remember, her end goal was to get people in the 15K program, okay? That program was the one she loved. It changed people's lives. It was her great work in the world. And previously, she could sell people in there directly. The problem was she and her team became obsessed with the tripwire offer, okay? The tripwire offer had become their false god. And here's how I knew the moment it happened. We're on a call and we're talking about sales, and continually the problem that her team was focused on was that no one was buying the tripwire offer. So then they would make changes and keep changing the marketing. They were changing the external marketing to get people to buy the tripwire offer. Are you following me? And we're talking through this on a call, and I'm never in your face with clients. I say things gently, usually a lot until they don't get it. And so I'm just clarifying this back to her. And I'm like, okay, so you're changing your external marketing, language, targeting, everything to get people to this tripwire offer. She goes, yeah. And then there was a silence. She just said, oh my God. I said, yeah. She goes, oh my God. It just hit her. It hit her that they were now focused on fixing a problem that they didn't even have before, which was changing who they were attracting, which is why they weren't selling and getting the right people into the 15K program. I hope you guys are following along with me. I'm very animated right now. If this was on video, you see me flailing my arms around wildly. This is better done on stage maybe. But this was the false god. So here's the best thing. She cleared it all out, got rid of the lower program, right? Re-engineered this thing to attract the clients directly to that program that she knew was perfect for them. She knew who they were. She had to get her hands dirty again for a while, but then rehired people to help with it. She figured out her way. And it's so fascinating to me that often the women who get trapped in these models, here they are in their industries, typically coming out with bold new things, bold new concepts, amazing things to work with people. They're disrupting so much, but then they'll turn over here and bring in some expert and then just do whatever they say is working in the industry. So they're disrupting everything but their model. They're taking unique, amazing, brazen ideas and things that they do and then trying to market it with a traditional, what's supposed to work marketing model. When this hit me, I was shaken up because I'm like, you know what? Here I am. I've been trying to do things differently. Why am I trying to follow an old model? Why am I trying to follow what everyone else does? Why am I listening to anyone? Why don't I feel into this, do some testing on my own, talk with my clients and customers, and then come up with new ways, and then I'll hire the experts for those pieces, right? But there's this abdication of responsibility. And I see a lot of women, very interestingly enough, turn that over to male coaches, male experts. Not bashing these guys. We need them. They're awesome. And I'm a big believer in, we should all be working together, the men and women, we all need both energies, right? But it's very interesting to see this. I think it's an abdication of responsibility. Like they're bold and brazen in their category, but then they want kind of daddy to come take care of everything for them, right? I've been there too with experts and people and just, you know why? We're exhausted. That's why. We're exhausted. especially when we're in these models that are exhausting. You don't have the brain space or the bandwidth to even know if these people are telling you bullshit or not. But everyone says, you got to hire Joe. Joe's the best. Joe does this guy's funnels and all this stuff marketing, so bring him in. And you know what I've realized, ladies? And I've spent a lot of money for you. Half these people are complete bullshit. Half these people don't know what they're doing. You have to really get clear on who you resonate with, who you think understands your business. Are they asking the right questions? Do they understand your market? Do they see what you're doing? Do they care what you're doing? Or are they just shoving you into a formula? I'm on fire today. This is fun. I wish I had more false gods. I actually have several here, but I got to go pick up the kids. So did you like this today? Then you got to be at Iconic. IconicWithAllieBrown.com, November 2nd and 3rd. We have less than 20 seats left. Incredible room. We talk about this stuff. And here's the thing. Everyone's business is different. Some of these things I talked about today and even made fun of may be required for you. Everyone's model's different. So we just play with things. We try it on. Everyone at every table, they're not all coaches. They're not all from one industry. We have women in agriculture. We have women in diversity, equity, inclusion, in corporate. We have women from healthcare. And some of the best feedback I get is from the coaches who do attend, saying it was so refreshing to be in a room with so many different kinds of business women and business models. And we exchange best practices and learn from each other. And if you have questions, ladies, I'm going to recommend that you give us a call. We'll talk to you. You'll see if it's a good fit for you. Again, you don't have to be at 7 figures, but we are looking for a few prereqs. I just want to make sure this ain't your first rodeo. And we're looking for women who will add to the room, who will add value, because there's nothing else out there like this. Hope to see you there, ladies. IconicWithAllieBrown.com. Let me know if this resonated with you. And my happy place now is Instagram. So if you're on there, please comment on this show there. And also, if you can, leave us a review on Apple. We would really, really appreciate it. Okay? Iconic with Allie Brown. Take care. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Glambition Radio. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you subscribe so you automatically get my new shows every week. Also, I'd love if you left us a review so more women like you can discover us. We're on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Pandora, and other major platforms. And I'd love to hear from you personally. Come join the conversation on social. Instagram is my happy place lately, and that's Allie Brown Official, but you can find links to my other platforms at alliebrown.com. Glambition Radio is the elevated conversation for women leaders, and I'm honored you tuned in.